Ralph Hicks, a 68-year-old human diplomat, stands in the intergalactic embassy on Earth, his eyes fixed on the breathtaking Prilorian ambassador Asha. No one dares approach her, but Ralph's weathered face breaks into a mischievous grin. He's about to attempt what no one else has dared, seducing the galaxy's most desirable alien. The embassy bustles with activity, a melting pot of human and alien delegates. Holographic displays flicker with trade agreements and resource allocation charts. At the center of it all stands Asha, her iridescent skin shimmering under the artificial lights, her four eyes scanning the room with razor-sharp intelligence. Ralph straightens his tie, feeling the weight of his decades of diplomatic experience. He knows the proposed trade agreement is trouble. The Prilorians want exclusive mining rights on Mars in exchange for advanced medical technology. It's a deal that could cripple Earth's future access to crucial resources. As he watches, a group of younger diplomats approach Asha, then veer away at the last moment, intimidated by her beauty and reputation. Ralph sees an opportunity where others see an impenetrable barrier. He remembers his reputation as a charming ladies' man in his youth and formulates a bold plan. The formal reception is in full swing. Alien dignitaries mingle with human officials, their translator devices creating a cacophony of languages. Ralph moves through the crowd with purpose, his eyes never leaving Asha. He reaches for 2 glasses of champagne from a passing server, his movements deliberate and confident. As he approaches Asha, Ralph becomes aware of a tense undercurrent in the room. His keen senses, honed by years of negotiations, pick up on furtive glances and hushed conversations. He catches snippets of words: extremists, assassination, sabotage. A chill runs down his spine as he realizes the stakes have just gotten higher. Ralph reaches Asha's side, offering her a glass of champagne. She turns, surprise evident in her multifaceted eyes. He launches into a witty opening line, drawing on all his charm and experience. As they begin to converse, Ralph's mind races. He must now balance 3 impossible tasks: protect Asha from the looming threat, secure a better deal for humanity, and navigate his growing attraction to this alluring alien. The embassy's security systems hum in the background, oblivious to the danger. Ralph spots a group of humans in the corner, their body language tense and hostile. He recognizes them as part of an anti-alien faction, likely the source of the assassination plot. As Asha laughs at one of Ralph's jokes, he feels a flutter in his chest. He pushes the feeling aside, reminding himself of his duty to Earth. But as their conversation deepens, touching on art, philosophy, and the nature of interspecies relations, Ralph finds himself genuinely captivated by Asha's intellect and perspective. The night stretches on, a delicate dance of diplomacy, desire, and danger. Ralph knows that his actions in the coming hours will shape the future of human-Prilorian relations. As he guides Asha to a more secluded area of the reception, ostensibly for a private negotiation, he steels himself for the challenges ahead. The fate of 2 worlds now rests in the hands of an old human male who dared to seduce the unseducible. Ralph's heart raced as he guided Asha to the secluded conference room, acutely aware of the tension simmering beneath the embassy's polished surface. As they entered, he caught a glimpse of their reflection in the glass walls. An unlikely pair, the weathered human diplomat and the ethereal Prilorian ambassador. "Ambassador Asha," Ralph began, his voice low and measured, "I believe we have an opportunity to revisit the terms of our agreement. There are aspects we've overlooked that could benefit both our peoples." Asha's 4 eyes focused on him, a mix of curiosity and wariness in her gaze. "I'm listening, Mr. Hicks, but I must warn you, my people are not easily swayed from our chosen course." Ralph smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. "Nor should they be, but consider this. Exclusive mining rights on Mars could limit Earth's future growth, potentially breeding resentment. What if we explored a joint venture instead? Shared technology, shared resources, shared profits." As Ralph spoke, he noticed Asha's posture softening. Her initial skepticism gave way to genuine interest. They delved deeper into the intricacies of interplanetary trade, their conversation flowing with unexpected ease. "You know, Mr. Hicks," Asha said, her voice tinged with amusement, "in all my years as ambassador, I've never met a human quite like you. Your approach is refreshing. Ralph chuckled, a warm sound that filled the room. Well, when you've been around as long as I have, you learn a thing or two about cutting through the noise. As they continued their discussion, Ralph found himself sharing stories from his long career, the triumphs, the near misses, and the moments that had shaped him. To his surprise, Asha reciprocated, offering glimpses into her own life as a Prylorian diplomat. It's not always easy, she admitted, her iridescent skin shimmering as she spoke. Many species see us as either a threat or an object of fascination. Few take the time to look beyond the surface. Ralph nodded, understanding all too well the challenges of breaking through preconceptions. As he opened his mouth to respond, movement outside the glass walls caught his eye. A flicker of shadow, a hint of something out of place. Acting on instinct honed by decades of diplomatic crises, Ralph smoothly rose from his seat. Ambassador, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to show you something quite extraordinary. It's a rare earth artifact we keep displayed in this very room. Asha looked puzzled but allowed Ralph to guide her to the far corner of the room, away from the windows. As they reached the display case, a muffled explosion rocked the building. Alarms blared to life, their shrill cry piercing the air. Ralph's mind raced, assessing the situation with practiced calm. He quickly secured the door, his movements efficient and purposeful. Pulling out his communicator, he contacted the head of security. Commander Chen, this is Ralph Hicks. I'm with Ambassador Asha in Conference Room B. What's the situation? Chen's voice crackled through the device, tense but controlled. Mr. Hicks, we have a breach. Possible extremist activity. Initiating lockdown and evacuation protocols. Stay where you are. We'll come to you. Ralph's eyes met Asha's, seeing his own mix of concern and willpower mirrored in her multifaceted gaze. It seems, Ambassador, that our negotiations have taken an unexpected turn. Asha's voice was steady as she replied, Indeed, Mr. Hicks. It appears we face a common threat. How do you suggest we proceed? Before Ralph could answer, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling for silence. Years of experience told him these weren't the measured steps of Chen's security team. In a split-second decision, Ralph moved to a panel hidden behind a decorative tapestry. His fingers danced across the surface, inputting a code known only to senior staff. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage. Ambassador, Ralph whispered urgently, we need to move. Now! Without hesitation, Asha followed Ralph into the hidden corridor. The wall slid shut behind them just as the conference room door burst open. In the cramped space, Ralph could feel the heat radiating from Asha's alien form, her breathing quick but controlled. They navigated the twisting passages in tense silence, the distant sounds of chaos filtering through the walls. As they rounded a corner, Ralph caught fragments of a conversation echoing through a ventilation shaft. Primary target is the Prylorian. Must not reach the secure levels. Ralph's blood ran cold as the implication sank in. This was no random attack. It was a coordinated assassination attempt on Asha. And based on the snippets he'd heard, it was part of something much larger and more sinister. As they emerged from the hidden passage into what appeared to be a deserted service corridor, Ralph's mind whirled with the gravity of the situation. He turned to Asha, ready to share his suspicions, when the sound of approaching footsteps froze them both in place. Two men in maintenance uniforms rounded the corner, their eyes widening at the sight of Ralph and Asha. In a heartbeat, Ralph recognized the look of predators who had just stumbled upon their prey. Time seemed to slow as Ralph's instincts kicked in. In one fluid motion, he pulled Asha close, his arms encircling her waist. Play along, he whispered, his lips brushing her ear. As the men approached, Ralph nuzzled Asha's neck, projecting the image of a couple caught in an intimate moment. He felt Asha stiffen for a split second before relaxing into the charade, her arms wrapping around his shoulders. The attackers hesitated, clearly thrown by the unexpected scene before them. It was all the opening Ralph needed. With a speed that belied his age, Ralph spun, his elbow connecting solidly with the first man's solar plexus. As the attacker doubled over, gasping for air, Ralph grabbed his arm, using the man's own momentum to throw him off balance. Beside him, Asha moved with liquid grace. Her forearms became a blur as she struck the second assailant with precision, targeting nerve clusters unique to human physiology. The man crumpled to the ground, incapacitated. As the echoes of the brief scuffle faded, Ralph and Asha stood back to back, both breathing heavily. The adrenaline of the moment coursed through Ralph's veins, making him feel decades younger. "Impressive moves, Ambassador," Ralph said, a note of admiration in his voice. Asha's reply carried a hint of wry humor. "You're not so bad yourself, Mr. Hicks. It seems we make quite the team." Their eyes met, and in that moment, Ralph felt a connection that transcended species and protocol. But there was no time to dwell on it. The sound of more footsteps, these ones hurried and numerous, reached their ears. "We need to keep moving," Ralph said, his voice low and urgent. "We're not out of danger yet." As they set off down the corridor, Ralph's mind raced with possibilities. They needed to reach Commander Chen and her security team, but the embassy had become a labyrinth of potential threats. Every decision could mean the difference between safety and disaster. Ralph glanced at Asha, her iridescent skin shimmering even in the dim emergency lighting. He thought of the fragile peace between their species, the delicate negotiations that had brought them to this point. Now, it all hung in the balance, threatened by extremists who feared what they didn't understand. With restored dedication, Ralph led the way deeper into the heart of the embassy. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. The fate of human-Prilorian relations now rested on their ability to survive the night. Night and their ability to work together in the face of danger. As they rounded another corner, Ralph's keen eyes spotted a familiar figure approaching. Commander Sarah Chen, flanked by her elite security team. Relief washed over Ralph as he raised a hand in greeting. "Commander Chen! Perfect timing!" Chen's sharp gaze took in the scene, assessing Ralph and Asha's disheveled appearance. "Mr. Hicks, Ambassador, are you both all right?" "We've managed so far," Ralph replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through his system. "But the situation is far more serious than we initially thought." Chen nodded, her expression grim. "Follow me. We've established a secure command center nearby." As they hurried through the corridors, Ralph filled Chen in on their encounter with the attackers. The commander listened intently, her stride never faltering as she led them to a nondescript door at the end of a service hallway. Chen placed her hand on a hidden scanner, and the door slid open to reveal a state-of-the-art command center. Banks of monitors lined the walls, displaying feeds from throughout the embassy. In the center of the room, a holographic projection of the building rotated slowly, highlighting areas of concern. "Welcome to our eyes and ears," Chen said, gesturing for Ralph and Asha to enter. As they stepped inside, Ralph's diplomatic instincts kicked into high gear. He scanned the monitors, piecing together the bigger picture. "What's our current status, Commander?" Chen's fingers flew across a nearby console, bringing up additional data. "We've contained most of the initial attack, but we've got a bigger problem. A group led by Darius Blackwood has taken control of the main power systems." Asha leaned in, her four eyes focusing intently on the display. "Blackwood, the leader of the Earth First movement?" Ralph nodded, his expression darkening. "A xenophobic extremist. If he's involved, this is worse than we thought." As if on cue, one of the technicians called out, "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the power control room." Darius Blackwood's face appeared on the main screen, his eyes wild with fervor. "Attention, embassy personnel. We control your life support systems. Our demands are simple. Terminate all Earth-Prilorian negotiations immediately and deport all alien diplomats. Failure to comply will result in a complete shutdown of life support. You have 1 hour to begin the process." The transmission cut off, leaving a tense silence in its wake. Ralph's mind raced, years of diplomatic crises, providing a foundation for his thoughts. He turned to Chen, his voice low but urgent. "Commander, I have a proposal. It's risky, but it might be our best shot." Chen raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening, Mr. Hicks." Ralph outlined his plan, drawing on his intimate knowledge of the embassy's layout and Asha's unique Prilorian abilities. As he spoke, he could see Chen's initial skepticism give way to consideration. It's unorthodox, Chen admitted when Ralph finished. But given the circumstances, it might be our only viable option. What do you think, Ambassador? Asha's iridescent skin shimmered as she nodded. I'm willing to try. Mr. Hicks and I have already proven we work well together under pressure. Ralph felt a surge of admiration for Asha's courage. As they began to prepare for the mission, he found himself working closely with the Prylorian ambassador, their earlier connection deepening into something more profound. During a brief lull in the preparations, Asha surprised Ralph by demonstrating a series of Earth-based combat moves. I studied your martial arts out of curiosity, she explained, her movements fluid and precise. I find human culture fascinating. Ralph watched, impressed by her skill and grace. You're full of surprises, Ambassador. I have a feeling we'll need every advantage we can get. As the final pieces of their plan fell into place, Ralph and Asha prepared to enter the ventilation system. Chen handed them each a secure communication device. We'll guide you through the ducts. Good luck, both of you. Ralph took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He caught Asha's gaze, seeing his own mix of willpower and apprehension reflected in her multifaceted eyes. With a nod to each other, they entered the narrow opening, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in the depths of the embassy. As they crawled through the tight space, Ralph could feel the heat radiating from Asha's alien form. The close proximity heightened his awareness of her, adding an unexpected layer of tension to their already precarious situation. He pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. The fate of Earth-Prylorian relations hung in the balance, and there was no room for distraction. They moved silently through the metal labyrinth, guided by Chen's calm voice in their earpieces. As they neared the power control room, Ralph could hear muffled voices growing louder. He signaled for Asha to stop, and they listened intently to the argument unfolding below. Darius Blackwood's voice rang out, filled with fanatical fervor. We're cleansing Earth of alien influence. This is our planet, our birthright. Another voice, hesitant and uncertain, replied, But sir, the government's response. Are we sure this is the right course of action? Ralph exchanged a glance with Asha. Dissension in the ranks could work to their advantage. He motioned for Asha to move closer to the vent grating, his mind already formulating a plan to exploit the growing discord among the extremists. As Ralph prepared to outline their next move, a sudden hiss of static from their communication devices interrupted his thoughts. Hicks, Ambassador, can you hear me? Commander Chen's voice crackled through the earpieces. We've regained control of the embassy systems. The immediate threat has been neutralized. Ralph and Asha exchanged relieved glances. Copy that, Commander, Ralph replied softly. We're heading back to you now. As they carefully retraced their path through the ventilation system, Ralph couldn't help but feel a growing sense of admiration for Asha. Her composure and quick thinking under pressure had been invaluable. When they finally emerged from the ducts, Chen was waiting with a team of security personnel. Excellent work, both of you, Chen said, her usual stoic demeanor softening slightly. We've apprehended Blackwood and his core group. The embassy is secure. In the aftermath of the crisis, Ralph found himself thrust into a whirlwind of debriefings, security assessments, and urgent communications with Earth's diplomatic corps. It wasn't until several days later that he had a moment to catch his breath and reflect on the events that had transpired. As he sat in his office staring out at the city skyline, a gentle knock on the door interrupted his musings. He turned to see Asha standing in the doorway, her iridescent skin shimmering in the afternoon light. Ambassador, Ralph greeted her, unable to keep a smile from spreading across his face. Please, come in. Asha entered, her four eyes scanning the room with curiosity. I hope I'm not interrupting, Mr. Hicks. I wanted to thank you personally for your actions during the attack. Ralph waved off her thanks. I should be thanking you, Ambassador. Your skills were instrumental in our survival. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with unspoken understanding. After a moment, Ralph cleared his throat. I've just received word that the Earth-Prylorian negotiations have been postponed for a week to allow for recovery and reassessment of security measures. Asha nodded, her expression thoughtful. A wise decision. The events of the past few days have given both our peoples much to consider. An idea began to form in Ralph's mind. Ambassador, if I may make a suggestion. He paused, considering his words carefully. This unexpected free time provides a unique opportunity. Would you be interested in experiencing some aspects of Earth culture firsthand? I could arrange a series of outings, each showcasing different facets of human life. Asha's eyes widened with interest. That's a fascinating proposal, Mr. Hicks. I must admit, I've been curious about human culture beyond the confines of diplomatic meetings. Excellent, Ralph said, his enthusiasm growing. Our first stop could be the farmer's market downtown. It's a wonderful introduction to Earth's culinary diversity. The next morning, Ralph and Asha found themselves strolling through the bustling market. Vibrant stalls overflowed with fresh produce, artisanal cheeses, and handcrafted goods. Asha's 4 eyes darted from one colorful display to another, taking in the sensory feast. This is remarkable, she breathed, pausing at a fruit stand. The variety of colors and shapes is astounding. Ralph picked up a ripe peach, its skin blushing pink and gold. Here, try this, he said, offering it to Asha. It's one of Earth's most beloved fruits. As Asha took a bite, her eyes widened with delight. The texture, the sweetness, it's unlike anything on Prylar. Their hands brushed as Ralph reached for another peach, sending an unexpected tingle through his fingers. He found himself acutely aware of Asha's presence beside him, her alien features somehow becoming more familiar and alluring with each passing moment. As they continued their exploration of the market, Ralph pointed out various Earth delicacies, explaining their cultural significance. Asha listened intently, her curiosity seemingly insatiable. They sampled artisanal cheeses, freshly baked bread, and local honey, each taste opening up new avenues of conversation about their respective worlds. Their next outing took them to a secluded botanical garden on the outskirts of the city. As they walked along winding paths bordered by lush vegetation, Ralph found himself captivated by Asha's reactions to Earth flora. These plants, Asha marveled, running her fingers along the petal of a vibrant orchid. They're so different from those on Prylar, yet there's a familiar beauty to them. Ralph nodded, watching as Asha bent to examine a patch of wildflowers. Their colors reminded him of the shimmering hues of her skin. Without thinking, he gently plucked one of the blooms and tucked it behind her ear. Asha froze for a moment, her skin flushing with an iridescent glow that Ralph found utterly mesmerizing. Their eyes met, and Ralph felt a surge of warmth in his chest. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. As the sun began to set, Ralph suggested they end their day with dinner at an upscale restaurant overlooking the city. Seated at a table with a panoramic view of the twinkling skyline, Ralph and Asha found themselves engrossed in deep conversation. "Tell me about your homeworld, Asha," Ralph said, using her name for the first time. "What made you choose a career in diplomacy?" Asha's eyes softened as she spoke of Prylar's crystalline cities and the complex social structures that had shaped her path. Ralph listened intently, finding himself drawn into her world. As the evening progressed, their chairs seemed to gravitate closer together. The candlelight played across Asha's features, highlighting the alien beauty that Ralph found increasingly captivating. He shared stories of his own diplomatic career, the triumphs and challenges that had led him to this moment. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, touching on personal hopes and fears they had never before voiced aloud. As they discussed the future of human-Pryllorian relations, Ralph realized that his perspective had shifted. The abstract concept of interspecies cooperation had become deeply personal, embodied in the remarkable being sitting across from him. As they left the restaurant, walking close together under the starry sky, Ralph felt a mix of exhilaration and apprehension. He was acutely aware of the potential complications their growing closeness could cause, yet he couldn't bring himself to regret a moment of their time together. Little did they know that their actions had not gone unnoticed. As they parted ways for the night, promising to meet again soon, shadowy figures watched from the darkness. The seed of their connection had been planted, but forces were already in motion that would soon test the strength of their bond. As Ralph and Asha walked through the park, their minds still buzzing from the intensity of their evening together, Neither noticed the shadows moving in the darkness around them. Suddenly, figures emerged from behind trees and bushes, surrounding them with startling speed. Ralph instinctively moved closer to Asha, his eyes scanning their assailants. He recognized the leader, one of Darius Blackwood's associates, and his heart sank as he realized the gravity of their situation. "Well, well," the leader sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "The alien lover and his pet. How convenient to find you both here." Ralph's diplomatic instincts kicked in. He raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Gentlemen, there's no need for violence. We can discuss this civilly." The leader laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the park. "Civility? With aliens? You've forgotten what it means to be human." As the group closed in, their weapons glinting in the moonlight, Ralph's mind raced. He glanced at Asha, her iridescent skin shimmering with tension. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Just as Ralph opened his mouth to attempt further negotiation, a blinding light engulfed the area. He threw his arm up to shield his eyes, hearing shouts of confusion from their attackers. When the light faded, Ralph blinked in disbelief. They were no longer in the park. Instead, he found himself standing on the metallic floor of what appeared to be a spacecraft. Beside him, Asha looked equally stunned. "Welcome aboard," a clear, authoritative voice rang out. Ralph turned to see a Prylorian in military uniform approaching them. "I am Captain Zara. We've been monitoring the situation and intervened just in time, it seems." As Captain Zara explained the rescue operation, Ralph's attention was drawn to the view screen showing the park below. The human extremists were being efficiently rounded up by Prylorian operatives using what appeared to be advanced, non-lethal weapons. "The High Council authorized this intervention," Captain Zara continued. "We couldn't risk harm coming to our ambassador or our human allies." Ralph nodded, still processing the rapid turn of events. "Thank you, Captain, but I fear this may complicate matters considerably." His prediction proved accurate. Within hours, as news of the incident spread, Earth's government issued a formal demand for the return of the captured extremists. The Prylorian High Council, citing the attempt on their ambassador's life, refused. Ralph found himself in a whirlwind of emergency meetings and tense video conferences. As he worked tirelessly to prevent the situation from escalating into a full-blown diplomatic crisis, an idea began to form. During a brief lull in the negotiations, Ralph approached Captain Zara. "I have a proposal," he said, his voice low and urgent. "A joint human Prylorian task force to investigate this extremist network. It could be the key to preventing further incidents and improving relations between our species." Captain Zara considered his words, her 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession. "An intriguing idea, Mr. Hicks. I'll present it to the High Council immediately." As they waited for a response, Ralph sought out Asha. He found her on the ship's observation deck, her gaze fixed on the blue-green orb of Earth below. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, moving to stand beside her. Asha turned to him, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the starlight. "I'm unharmed, thanks to you, and the quick action of my people. But I can't help wondering if our growing closeness contributed to this attack." Ralph felt a pang in his chest. He reached out, his fingers brushing against her shimmering skin. "Asha, His words were cut off as Asha suddenly pressed her body against his, her alien features inches from his face. Without thinking, Ralph closed the distance between them, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Electric, alien, and utterly intoxicating. They broke apart at the sound of the door sliding open. Captain Zara stood in the entrance, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Hicks, Ambassador, I have news. Both the High Council and Earth's government have agreed to your task force proposal." Ralph nodded, trying to regain his composure. "Excellent. We should begin preparations immediately." As they followed Captain Zara to the briefing room, Ralph's mind raced. The task force would be challenging enough, but now he had to navigate his evolving relationship with Asha as well. And little did he know, further complications were just around the corner. The next day, as the newly formed task force gathered on a neutral space station orbiting Earth, Ralph was introduced to the final member of their team. Dr. Elias Vorn, a renowned human xenobiologist, strode into the room with confidence, his charismatic presence immediately drawing attention. "Dr. Vorn," Ralph greeted him, extending a hand. "Your expertise will be invaluable to our investigation." Vorn shook his hand firmly, his piercing gaze moving past Ralph to rest on Asha. "The pleasure is all mine," he said, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I'm particularly looking forward to working with you, Ambassador. Your unique perspective will be crucial to our success." As Vorn engaged Asha in conversation, his body language radiating interest both professional and personal, Ralph felt an unfamiliar twinge of jealousy. He pushed the feeling aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. They had a complex web of extremism to unravel, and time was not on their side. They had a complex web of extremism to unravel, and time was not on their side. As Ralph reviewed the task force's initial findings, a blaring alarm shattered the relative calm of the space station. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an eerie glow as the station's AI announced a security breach in a calm, detached voice. Ralph's years of diplomatic training kicked in. He grabbed his communication device and barked orders to the security team. "Lock down all sensitive areas and initiate containment protocols." Asha appeared at his side, her iridescent skin pulsing with tension. "Ralph, Dr. Vorn is missing. He was last seen entering the restricted data storage area." Before Ralph could respond, the station rocked violently. The artificial gravity flickered, causing them to stumble. Klaxons blared, warning of multiple hull breaches. "This is no coincidence," Ralph muttered, steadying himself against a wall. He tapped his comm device. "All personnel, report to emergency stations. This is not a drill." As chaos erupted around them, Ralph and Asha sprang into action. They raced through the corridors, dodging panicked crew members and sparking electrical panels. Ralph's mind raced, connecting the dots between Dr. Vorn's disappearance and the sudden attack. They reached the command center, where holographic displays showed the extent of the damage. Multiple sections of the station were flashing red, indicating breaches or system failures. Captain Zara, her usually composed demeanor strained, approached them. "Mr. Hicks, we've lost contact with several key areas of the station. And there's more. An unmarked ship is requesting emergency docking procedures." Ralph's eyes narrowed. It could be a trap, but we can't ignore a potential ally or a new threat in this situation. Allow them to dock, but in a quarantined bay, double the security measures. As Zara relayed the orders, Asha closed her eyes, her antennae quivering slightly. "Ralph, I can sense Dr. Vorn's biochemical signature. It's faint, but it's leading towards the abandoned section in the lower levels." Ralph nodded, his expression grim. "We need to find him and secure that stolen data. Captain Zara, can you spare a security detail?" Before Zara could answer, the doors to the command center hissed open. A group of armed individuals strode in, led by a tough-looking human woman with short-cropped hair and a scar across her left cheek. "That won't be necessary," the woman said, her voice gravelly. "Captain Lyra, at your service. My team and I have some information you might find interesting about your extremist problem." Ralph tensed, his hand hovering near his sidearm. "How did you get past our security?" Lyra smirked. "Let's just say we're very good at what we do. We were hired to infiltrate the extremist group, and we've uncovered some pretty nasty stuff, including links to high-ranking officials on both your world." Before Ralph could question her further, another violent tremor shook the station. Alarms shrieked as the AI announced multiple new hull breaches. "We don't have time for this," Ralph said, making a split-second decision. "Captain Lyra, if you're offering help, we'll take it, but if this is a trick, I promise you'll regret it." Lyra nodded, her expression serious. "No tricks. My team is at your disposal." Ralph quickly organized the available personnel into mixed teams of task force members and Lyra's mercenaries. He paired Asha with Lyra, hoping the Prilorian's enhanced senses would help keep the unpredictable captain in check. "Asha, Lyra, you're with me," Ralph ordered. "We're going after Dr. Vorn. The rest of you, focus on repelling the attackers and stabilizing the station." As they made their way through the chaotic corridors towards the abandoned section, Ralph couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger and more dangerous than they had initially realized. The station shuddered around them, a constant reminder of the precarious situation they faced. Asha led the way, her antennae twitching as she followed Dr. Vorn's fading trail. They descended into the bowels of the station, where emergency lighting cast long shadows, and the air grew thick with the scent of ozone and burning circuitry. "We're close," Asha whispered, her skin shimmering with an unearthly glow in the dim light. They rounded a corner and froze. Before them stood a sealed door, its surface gleaming with an unfamiliar alloy. Lyra stepped forward, examining the locking mechanism with a practiced eye. "This is high-tech stuff," she muttered, "way beyond standard station security." Ralph's comm device crackled to life. Captain Zara's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Mr. Hicks, we've managed to repel the initial attack, but our long-range sensors are picking up multiple incoming vessels. We need you back at command immediately." Ralph looked at the sealed door, then back at Asha and Lyra. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, a ticking clock in his mind reminding him of the station's perilous state. "We press on," he said firmly. "Whatever's behind this door, it's the key to unraveling this whole mess. Captain Zara, hold the fort. We'll be back as soon as we can." As Lyra worked to bypass the door's security, Ralph felt Asha's hand slip into his. He met her gaze, finding in her alien eyes a reflection of his own dedication and fear. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a sight that made Ralph's blood run cold. The laboratory beyond was a nightmarish fusion of human and Prylorian technology, filled with pulsing, organic-looking machines and glowing canisters of unidentifiable substances. And there, at the center of it all, lay Dr. Vorn, unconscious and connected to a grotesque apparatus that seemed to be burrowing into his skull. "By all the stars," Asha breathed, her voice a mix of horror and fascination. As they rushed to free Dr. Vorn, a holographic image flickered to life before them. Ralph's eyebrows furrowed as he recognized the figure. Ambassador Zorn, the respected Prylorian diplomat who had been instrumental in initiating the trade negotiations with Earth. The hologram spoke, its voice filled with a chilling mixture of pride and madness. "Ah, Mr. Hicks, I see you've discovered our little project. I'm afraid I can't allow you to interfere." The laboratory around them began to pulse with an ominous red light, and a computerized voice announced the activation of a self-destruct sequence. Ralph's mind raced, calculating their options as the countdown began. He looked at Dr. Vorn, still unconscious and vulnerable, then at the canisters of mysterious genetic material. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, and time was running out. Ralph's heart raced as the countdown echoed through the laboratory. He glanced at the unconscious Dr. Vorn, then at the canisters of genetic material, weighing his options in a split second. "Lyra, grab Vorn! Asha, help me with these canisters!" he shouted, springing into action. They worked frantically, disconnecting Dr. Vorn from the grotesque apparatus and securing as many canisters as they could carry. The station shuddered around them, the self-destruct sequence nearing its end. "Time to go," Lyra barked, hefting Dr. Vorn over her shoulder with surprising strength. They sprinted through the corridors, alarms blaring and emergency lights casting eerie shadows. Ralph's lungs burned as they ran, the weight of the canisters threatening to slow him down. Asha kept pace beside him, her iridescent skin pulsing with exertion. They reached the docking bay just as another violent tremor rocked the station. Ralph stumbled, nearly dropping his precious cargo. Asha steadied him, her touch sending a jolt through his body despite the chaos surrounding them. "Our shuttle's gone!" Lyra shouted, gesturing to the empty bay. Ralph's mind raced. "The unmarked ship that docked earlier? It's our only chance." They found the ship, its airlock mercifully open. As they piled inside, Ralph's comm device crackled to life. Captain Zara's voice came through, strained and urgent. "Mr. Hicks, multiple hostile vessels approaching. We can't hold them off much longer." "We're on our way, Captain," Ralph responded, strapping himself into the pilot's seat. "Prepare for immediate evacuation." The ship's engines roared to life as Ralph's fingers flew over the unfamiliar controls. They burst from the docking bay just as a series of explosions tore through the station behind them. As they sped away from the disintegrating structure, Ralph's mind whirled with the implications of what they'd discovered. Ambassador Zorn's involvement, the mysterious genetic experiments, the attack on the station, it all pointed to a conspiracy far larger and more insidious than they'd imagined. The next few hours passed in a blur of emergency protocols and frantic communications. With the space station compromised, they were forced to relocate to a secure facility on Earth's moon. As they approached the lunar base, Ralph couldn't shake the feeling that they were entering a new, more dangerous phase of their mission. The lunar facility was a stark contrast to the sleek lines of the space station. Utilitarian and built for function rather than form, it hummed with an air of secrecy and purpose. As they disembarked, Ralph took stock of their situation. Dr. Vorn was being rushed to the medical bay, while Lyra and her team secured the perimeter. In the command center, Ralph found himself facing a room full of expectant faces, human and Prylorian alike. The weight of leadership settled heavily on his shoulders as he began to outline their next steps. "We've uncovered evidence of a far-reaching conspiracy," Ralph stated, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "Ambassador Zorn is involved, and we have reason to believe there are more high-ranking officials implicated on both our worlds." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. Ralph continued, "We need to gather concrete evidence and expose this network before they can do any more damage. To that end, I propose a risky but potentially game-changing strategy." He took a deep breath, aware of Asha's eyes on him. "I'll request a private meeting with Ambassador Zorn, under the guise of negotiating a new trade agreement. It's our best chance to get close enough to gather the evidence we need." The room erupted in a cacophony of voices, some supportive, others vehemently opposed. As the arguments raged, Ralph felt a gentle touch on his arm. He turned to find Asha beside him, her multifaceted eyes filled with concern. "It's too dangerous," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the din. "Let me go instead." Ralph shook his head, his hand unconsciously moving to cover hers. "It has to be me. My reputation as a diplomat makes the request believable. Besides, I can't risk putting you in harm's way." Asha's antennae quivered with emotion. "And you think I can bear to see you walk into danger alone?" Their eyes locked, the intensity of their connection palpable even amidst the chaos of the command center. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken feelings and the weight of their shared experiences. Before Ralph could respond, Captain Lyra's voice cut through the noise. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right. My team can spread some rumors, make your request seem more plausible, and we'll need a way to track you once you're inside." Dr. Vorn, looking pale but determined, stepped forward. "I can help with that. I've been working on a sophisticated tracking device, small enough to be implanted under the skin, but powerful enough to monitor location and vital signs." As the team began to hash out the details of the plan, Ralph found his gaze continually drawn to Asha. The memory of their kiss on the observation deck of the previous station lingered in his mind, adding a layer of complexity to an already fraught situation. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Ralph threw himself into the work, pushing aside his growing feelings for Asha and the gnawing fear of what lay ahead. But in the confined spaces of the lunar base, it was impossible to avoid her entirely. Late one night, Ralph found himself in the observation dome, staring at the blue-green orb of Earth suspended in the star-studded blackness of space. The sight of their two worlds hanging in the void struck him anew with the enormity of their mission. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Asha's voice came from behind him, soft and tinged with awe. Ralph turned to find her standing in the entrance, her iridescent skin reflecting the starlight. His breath caught in his throat at the sight of her. "Asha," he began, but found himself at a loss for words. She moved to stand beside him, her shoulder brushing against his. The contact sent a shiver through Ralph's body. "I know you think you have to do this alone," Asha said, her eyes fixed on the earth. "But you're wrong. We're stronger together, Ralph. Let me come with you as your aide." Ralph opened his mouth to protest, but Asha pressed a finger to his lips, silencing him. The touch was electric, igniting a fire that had been smoldering between them for weeks. I can't let you face this danger alone, she whispered, her face inches from his. In that moment, all of Ralph's carefully constructed barriers crumbled. He pulled Asha close, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. As their bodies intertwined, the enormity of their mission faded away, leaving only the desperate need for connection in the face of impending danger. The next morning, as Ralph and Asha prepared to depart for their meeting with Ambassador Zorn, the atmosphere in the lunar base was tense with anticipation. Dr. Vorn fitted Ralph with the tracking device, its presence under his skin a constant reminder of the risks they were taking. As they boarded the shuttle that would take them to the neutral space station where the meeting was to take place, Ralph felt a mix of tenacity and dread. He glanced at Asha, finding strength in her steady gaze. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "we face it together." Asha nodded, her hand slipping into his as the shuttle's engines roared to life. As they lifted off from the lunar surface, neither of them could have anticipated the shocking revelations and life-altering decisions that lay ahead. As the shuttle docked with the neutral space station, Ralph took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation to come. Asha squeezed his hand reassuringly before they disembarked. The station's pristine corridors were a stark contrast to the chaos they had left behind. As they approached the designated meeting room, Ralph's mind raced with potential scenarios and diplomatic strategies, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. The door slid open to reveal Ambassador Zorn, his usually composed demeanor replaced by one of visible distress. Before Ralph could utter a word, Zorn spoke, his voice urgent and low. "Mr. Hicks, we don't have much time. I've made a grave mistake, and I need your help to correct it." Ralph exchanged a surprised glance with Asha. This was not how he had expected the meeting to begin. Zorn continued, his words tumbling out in a rush. "The hybrid project. It wasn't just about creating a superior species. There's a cosmic threat approaching, one that could annihilate both our worlds. I believed the hybrids were our only hope of survival, but now I see the error of my ways." As Zorn spoke, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The ambassador's eyes widened in panic. "We need to get to the command center, now!" Without hesitation, Ralph and Asha followed Zorn as he sprinted down the corridor. But their path was soon blocked by a group of Prylorian guards, their weapons raised. "Stand down!" Zorn shouted, but the guards held their position, clearly confused by the situation. Ralph stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Gentlemen, I understand your confusion, but we are facing a crisis that threatens both our species. Ambassador Zorn is acting in the best interests of us all. Please, let us pass." His words seemed to have an effect on some of the guards, who lowered their weapons, but others remained hostile, their fingers tightening on their triggers. Asha moved with lightning speed. Her hands glowed with a strange energy as she touched two of the more aggressive guards. They collapsed instantly, unconscious but unharmed. "Prylorian nerve technique," she explained quickly, as Ralph gaped at her in amazement. With the immediate threat neutralized, they pressed on towards the command center. As they rounded the final corner, they found themselves face to face with Captain Lyra and her mercenary team. Lyra's eyes narrowed as she saw Zorn. "You've got some explaining to do, Ambassador," she growled, raising her weapon. Ralph quickly stepped between them. "Captain, I know this looks bad, but we need to work together. There's a greater threat at play here, one that could destroy everything we know." Lyra hesitated, her gaze flicking between Ralph and Zorn. Finally, she lowered her weapon. "This better be good, Hicks." Inside the command center, Zorn rushed to the long-range sensor controls. As he worked, Ralph and Asha quickly briefed Lyra on the situation. The mercenary captain listened with growing concern, her usual bravado replaced by a fierce dedication. "There," Zorn said, his voice barely above a whisper. On the main view screen, a massive energy signature appeared, moving steadily through space. The cosmic entity. It's consumed entire star systems already, and it's heading straight for our worlds. The gravity of the situation settled over the room like a heavy blanket. But before they could discuss their next move, the door to the command center hissed open. Dr. Vorn stumbled in, looking haggard but determined. In his hands, he clutched a datapad. "I've got it," he gasped. The key to our survival. As Dr. Vorn explained his findings on the hybrid experiments and their potential to generate an energy field capable of repelling the cosmic entity, Ralph's mind whirled with the implications. The ethical concerns were enormous, but so was the threat they faced. We need to find a middle ground, Ralph said, looking around at the diverse group assembled in the command center. A way to use this research without compromising our principles. Asha stepped forward, her eyes bright with an idea. What if we use the approaching fleet as a test case? We reveal the threat and challenge them to work together. It could set a precedent for large-scale cooperation between our species. Ralph nodded, building on her suggestion. And we share the hybrid research too. Get their input on the ethical considerations. We might find a solution that works for everyone. As they prepared to contact the approaching fleet, tensions in the command center rose. Zorn paced nervously, while Lyra and her team stood ready for any potential threat. Dr. Vorn worked feverishly at a console, muttering to himself. Suddenly, Dr. Vorn let out a triumphant shout. I've got it! We might be able to adapt the energy-generating capabilities into a technological solution. No genetic manipulation required. A ripple of hope spread through the room. Ralph turned to Asha, seeing his own mix of persistence and apprehension reflected in her alien eyes. As they prepared to address the approaching fleet commanders, he knew that the next few moments would shape the fate of both their species. Ralph took a deep breath and activated the communication channel. This is Ralph Hicks, requesting an emergency conference with the fleet commanders. We have information of critical importance to the future of both our worlds. As they waited for a response, Ralph felt the weight of countless lives resting on his shoulders. Whatever came next, he knew that the rules of the game had changed forever. The true test of human and Prelorian cooperation was about to begin. The true test of human and Prelorian cooperation was about to face its first major hurdle. As Ralph opened his mouth to address the fleet commanders, a violent tremor shook the station. The lights flickered, and the communication panel in front of him sparked ominously before going dark. "What's happening?" Asha exclaimed, steadying herself against a nearby console. Dr. Vorn's fingers flew across a control panel. "It's the cosmic entity," he said, his voice tight with worry. "Its proximity is causing massive energy fluctuations. Our communications are down." Ralph's mind raced, years of diplomatic crisis management kicking into high gear. "We need a new plan fast," he said, turning to the group. "Without communications, we can't reach the fleet remotely." "What if we go to them directly?" Asha suggested, her multifaceted eyes gleaming with determination. Ralph nodded, a plan forming in his mind. "Exactly. We'll take a shuttle and meet with the fleet commanders face to face. It's risky, but it might be our only chance to get our message across." Captain Lyra stepped forward, her hand resting on her weapon. "I don't like the idea of you two going out there alone. It's too dangerous." "She's right," Dr. Vorn interjected. "I should come with you. My scientific expertise might be crucial in explaining the situation." Ralph looked at Ambassador Zorn, who had been uncharacteristically quiet. "Ambassador, we need you to stay here with Captain Lyra and her team. Continue analyzing the data and prepare our defenses as best you can." Zorn nodded solemnly. "Understood. Good luck out there." As Ralph, Asha, and Dr. Vorn made their way to the shuttle bay, the station shuddered again. Emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie red glow through the corridors. "The entity's accelerating," Dr. Vorn said, checking a data pad as they walked. "We don't have much time." They boarded the shuttle quickly, Ralph taking the pilot's seat with Asha beside him as co-pilot. As the airlocks cycled and the shuttle launched into space, Ralph caught sight of the approaching fleet. Dozens of ships, both human and Prelorian, hung in the void like a metallic constellation. The shuttle's cramped interior forced them into close proximity. Ralph felt Asha's arm brush against his as she adjusted some controls, and a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. Their eyes met briefly, and Ralph saw his own mix of fear and tenacity reflected in her alien gaze. Dr. Vorn, seated behind them, cleared his throat. "I've prepared a data package on the cosmic entity and our proposed defense. It should help convince the fleet commanders of the gravity of our situation." As they approached the fleet, Ralph opened a communication channel. "This is Ralph Hicks, requesting an emergency meeting with both human and Prylorian fleet commanders. We have critical information regarding an imminent threat to both our worlds. There was a tense moment of silence before a response came through. Shuttlecraft, you are cleared to dock with the human flagship. Proceed to docking bay 3. The docking procedure was tense, with Ralph acutely aware of the suspicious gazes of the hangar crew as they disembarked. A stern-faced human officer approached them. See, Mr. Hicks, I'm Admiral Chen. This way, please. The Prylorian High Commander has agreed to meet us in the briefing room. As they followed Admiral Chen through the ship's corridors, Ralph felt the weight of countless lives resting on his shoulders. The fate of 2 worlds would be decided in the next few minutes. The briefing room was a study in tension. Human and Prylorian officers sat on opposite sides of a long table, eyeing each other warily. At the head of the table sat an imposing Prylorian figure, High Commander Vexthor, his carapace gleaming under the harsh lighting. Ralph stepped forward, his diplomatic training kicking in as he addressed the room. Commanders, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I know our arrival is unexpected, but we bring news of a threat that endangers both our species. He nodded to Dr. Vorn, who activated a holographic display in the center of the table. The image of the cosmic entity appeared, a swirling mass of energy that seemed to devour the very fabric of space around it. This entity, Ralph continued, is approaching our star systems at an alarming rate. It has already consumed entire worlds, and both Earth and Pryloria lie in its path. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices. Some officers called for immediate evacuation, while others demanded military action against the entity. High Commander Vexthor's voice cut through the chaos. And what do you propose we do about this threat, Mr. Hicks? Ralph took a deep breath. We have a potential solution, but it will require unprecedented cooperation between our species. As Ralph outlined their plan for a network of energy-generating satellites, he could see the mix of skepticism and hope on the faces around him. Asha stepped forward, her presence capturing the attention of both human and Prylorian officers. I know the history between our people has been fraught, she said, her voice steady and clear. But this threat doesn't care about our past conflicts. It will consume us all if we don't stand together. Her words seemed to resonate with many in the room. Admiral Chen leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. This satellite network you're proposing, how quickly can it be constructed? Before Dr. Vorn could answer, alarms blared throughout the ship. A young officer burst into the room, his face pale. Admirals, we're detecting massive energy spikes at the edge of our fleet. Several ships are reporting power failures. The mood in the room shifted instantly from skepticism to urgency. High Commander Vexthor stood, his compound eyes fixed on the holographic display of the cosmic entity. It seems, Mr. Hicks, that your warning was timely. What do you need from us to begin this project? As Ralph began to outline the resources they would need, his datapad buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Captain Lyra, and the contents made his blood run cold. Ambassador Zorn has fled the station, he read aloud, his voice tight. He's taken critical data on the hybrid technology and the entity's weaknesses. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Ralph looked up, meeting Asha's worried gaze. They both knew that Zorn's betrayal could unravel everything they had just accomplished. High Commander Vexthor's voice broke the silence. This changes things. We cannot proceed without that data. Ralph's mind raced, knowing that the fragile alliance they had just formed was on the verge of collapse. He needed to act fast to keep their plan from falling apart. Commanders, he said, his voice filled with urgency, I propose we form a small elite team to track down Ambassador Zorn and recover the stolen data. We can operate outside official channels, moving quickly while the rest of our forces begin preparations for the satellite network. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. It's risky, but we don't have many options. Who do you have in mind for this team? Ralph looked at Asha and Dr. Vorn, seeing the grit in their eyes. Myself, Asha, and Dr. Vorn, along with a select group of your best human and Prylorian specialists, will need to move fast and operate with complete autonomy. As the commanders debated the proposal, Ralph felt a mix of anticipation and dread. The mission to find Zorn would be dangerous, pushing them to their limits. But as he caught Asha's eye across the room, he knew that together they stood a chance of saving both their worlds. The chase was on and the clock was ticking. Ticking. Ralph knew they had to act fast. "We're going after Zorn," Ralph announced, his voice carrying an air of finality. "Admiral Chen, High Commander Vexthor, we'll need a small team of your best operatives. Can you spare them?" The two leaders exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. Within minutes, a diverse group of human and Prylorian specialists had assembled, their skills ranging from tactical operations to advanced hacking. As the newly formed team boarded their stealth-capable vessel, Captain Lyra's voice crackled over the comm system. "We've traced Zorn's last known trajectory. He's headed for a place called Haven's Edge." Dr. Vorn's eyes widened. "The lawless space station? It's a hive of scum and villainy." "Then that's where we're going," Ralph said, his teeth clenched. "Asha, plot a course. We need to get there before Zorn can offload that data." The journey to Haven's Edge was tense, with Ralph and Asha working closely to formulate a plan. As they approached the massive, retrofitted asteroid that served as the station, Ralph couldn't help but notice how Asha's proximity affected him. Her alien features, once so foreign, now held a strange allure. "We'll need to blend in," Asha said, breaking Ralph's reverie. "This place is crawling with all sorts of species. We can use that to our advantage." Ralph nodded, an idea forming. "We'll pose as a human Prylorian couple looking for exotic goods. It's not uncommon, and it'll give us an excuse to ask questions without arousing suspicion." As they docked at Haven's Edge, Ralph used every ounce of his diplomatic training to secure clearance without revealing their true purpose. The team split into smaller groups, with Dr. Vorn and the specialists setting up a makeshift command center in their ship. Ralph and Asha ventured into the heart of Haven's Edge, arm in arm like any other interspecies couple. The station was a sensory overload, a riot of neon lights, pungent odors, and the constant hum of 1,000 different languages. As they navigated the crowded corridors, Ralph found himself hyper-aware of Asha's presence. Her arm, cool and smooth against his, sent shivers down his spine. They passed a group of suspicious-looking Zernians, their eye stalks swiveling in their direction. Without warning, Asha pulled Ralph close and pressed her mouth to his. The kiss was electric, alien yet familiar. When they broke apart, the Zernians had moved on, no longer interested in the amorous couple. "Quick thinking," Ralph murmured, his heart racing from more than just the close call. Asha's multifaceted eyes seemed to sparkle. "All part of the act, right?" As they continued their search, Dr. Vorn's voice came through their concealed earpieces. "I'm picking up traces of Zorn's biosignature, but this place is a maze of signal jammers and shielded areas. You'll need to get closer." Their investigation led them to a seedy information broker who, after some persuasion and a hefty bribe, revealed that Zorn had made contact with a notorious figure named Zelthar. "If anyone can move that data off station undetected, it's Zelthar," the broker hissed. "Word is they're meeting at the Nebula's Heart, that new nightclub in the lower levels." The Nebula's Heart was unlike anything Ralph had ever experienced. Bioluminescent flora pulsed in time with the music, while patrons of a dozen different species writhed on the dance floor. The air was thick with exotic pheromones, making Ralph's head swim. As they pushed through the crowd, Ralph felt Asha pressed against him, her body moving in sync with his. He tried to focus on the mission, but the heat of the club and the intoxicating alien scents were making it difficult to think straight. Finally, they spotted their quarry. In a private VIP area, Ambassador Zorn sat across from a multi-armed reptilian alien, presumably Zelthar. The two were engaged in intense negotiations, datapads and credit chits changing hands. "We need a distraction," Ralph whispered to Asha. "Follow my lead." Raising his voice, Ralph began to berate Asha in a mixture of human and Prylorian expletives. Asha, catching on quickly, responded with equal fervor. Their shouting match quickly drew the attention of nearby patrons and security personnel. As a burly Craxian bouncer moved to separate them, Asha stumbled, accidentally bumping into Zorn's table. In the confusion, she managed to plant a tiny tracking device on the ambassador's robes. The bouncer grabbed Ralph and Asha, dragging them towards the exit. "You two are out of here." Just as they were about to be thrown out, Dr. Vorn's panicked voice came through their earpieces. The cosmic entity, its influence has reached the station. We're seeing massive power fluctuations and system failures across Haven's Edge. As if on cue, the club's lights flickered and died, plunging the space into chaos. Screams and shouts filled the air as panicked patrons rushed for the exits. In the midst of the mayhem, Ralph made a split-second decision. He activated the club's emergency broadcast system, his voice booming over the speakers. People of Haven's Edge, listen carefully. The power failures you're experiencing are just the beginning. A cosmic entity is approaching, one that threatens not just this station, but every inhabited world in the galaxy. We have the means to stop it, but we need your help. As Ralph continued his impassioned plea, Asha's eyes locked with his. In that moment, with the future of the cosmos hanging in the balance, the connection between them felt stronger than ever. They both knew that what happened next would determine not just the success of their mission, but the very future of their species and their relationship. The inhabitants of Haven's Edge listened with rapt attention, their initial panic giving way to a tense silence. As Ralph finished speaking, the air was electric with possibility. Would they rally behind this unlikely team, or would the notorious individualism of Haven's Edge prevail? The next few moments would be crucial, and Ralph knew that every second counted as the cosmic entity drew ever closer. Closer. As Ralph's impassioned words echoed through Haven's Edge, a palpable shift rippled through the diverse crowd. Expressions of fear and skepticism slowly gave way to grit and determination. The station's inhabitants, accustomed to looking out for themselves, began to realize the gravity of the situation as system failures cascaded around them. Asha, her eyes locked with Ralph's, nodded in silent agreement. They had struck a chord, and it was time to capitalize on this momentum. "We need to organize," Ralph announced, his voice carrying over the din of the panicked crowd. "Anyone willing to help, gather near the main entrance. We'll form search parties to cover more ground." To their surprise, a motley crew of smugglers, mercenaries, and even a few rogue security personnel stepped forward. The unlikely alliance began to take shape, with Ralph and Asha at its center. As they divided into teams, Dr. Vorn's voice crackled through their earpieces. "I've made a breakthrough with the tracking device's data. Zorn's in a restricted area called the Shadow Dock. It's used for clandestine departures." Ralph's mind raced. "We need to move fast. He's likely preparing to leave the station." With their makeshift coalition in place, Ralph outlined a multi-pronged approach to infiltrate the Shadow Dock. Teams were assigned to disable security systems, create diversions, and block potential escape routes. "Asha and I will confront Zorn directly," Ralph declared, his eyes meeting hers. "We stand the best chance of subduing him." As they made their way through the labyrinthine corridors of the Shadow Dock, Ralph and Asha encountered heavy resistance. Zorn's hired security forces emerged from hidden alcoves, energy weapons blazing. Ducking behind a metal crate, Ralph felt the heat of a blast singe his hair. Asha, her Prylorian reflexes lightning fast, vaulted over their cover and engaged two guards in hand-to-hand combat. Ralph watched in awe as she moved with fluid grace, her alien physiology allowing her to dodge and strike with incredible speed. He shook off his momentary distraction and joined the fray, his diplomatic training surprisingly useful in predicting his opponent's moves. As they fought side by side, Ralph marveled at how in sync they had become. They anticipated each other's movements, covering blind spots and creating openings for devastating counterattacks. Suddenly, the corridor lurched violently. Gravity fluctuated, causing debris to float randomly through the air. The cosmic entity's influence was growing stronger by the minute. "We need to hurry," Asha shouted, using a floating piece of equipment as a springboard to launch herself at the last remaining guard. They pressed on, navigating the increasingly chaotic environment. Electromagnetic pulses disabled their communication devices, leaving them cut off from Dr. Vorn and the rest of their team. Finally, they reached a heavily reinforced door. Through the small window, they could see a sleek shuttle waiting in a private hangar. Zorn was there, frantically inputting commands into a control panel. "Stand back," Asha warned. She placed her hands on the door and, with a display of Prylorian strength that still amazed Ralph, began to pry it open. As the door groaned open, Zorn spun to face them, his expression a mix of panic and defiance. "You don't understand," he shouted as Ralph and Asha entered the hangar. "I'm trying to save us all." "By stealing crucial data and running away?" Ralph countered, inching closer. "Explain yourself, Ambassador." Zorn's posture sagged, the fight seeming to drain out of him. "The architects," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They have the technology to repel the cosmic entity. I was going to bargain with them, use the data as leverage." As Ralph opened his mouth to respond, Asha's sharp intake of breath caught his attention. He followed her gaze to see Zorn's hand slowly moving towards a concealed weapon. Time seemed to slow. Ralph saw Asha tense, preparing to spring into action. He knew he should move, should do something, but he found himself frozen in place. In a blur of motion, Asha tackled Zorn. The impact sent them both sprawling across the hangar floor. As they grappled, a strange look passed over both their faces. A moment of shared disorientation from the contact between their Prilorian physiologies. Ralph snapped out of his momentary paralysis and lunged for the data drive that had fallen from Zorn's grasp. Just as his fingers closed around it, a massive energy pulse from the cosmic entity rocked the station. Gravity reversed violently. Ralph felt his feet leave the floor as he was flung upwards, the data drive clutched tightly in his hand. He saw Asha and Zorn similarly airborne, their limbs flailing as they tried to orient themselves. With a grunt of effort, Ralph managed to grab onto an overhead pipe. His muscles strained as he fought to maintain his grip. Below, or was it above now, he saw Asha still grappling with Zorn, using her superior agility to maneuver them both towards him. Their eyes met, and in that instant, Ralph knew he faced an impossible choice. He could reach for Asha or secure the data drive that held the key to saving both their species. Time seemed to stretch as Ralph made his decision. Trusting in the connection they had forged, he released his grip on the pipe and reached for Asha's outstretched hand. Their fingers intertwined just as gravity reasserted itself. They crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs, the impact knocking the wind out of Ralph. Zorn lay unconscious beside them, but the data drive remained secure in Ralph's grasp. As they lay there breathing heavily, Ralph became acutely aware of Asha's body pressed against his. Her alien features, once so foreign, now seemed impossibly beautiful. Their eyes locked, and the tension that had been building between them finally snapped. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, the adrenaline of the moment fueling the fire of their attraction. Ralph marveled at the alien yet familiar sensation, his knees going weak from both the intensity of the kiss and the implications of their actions. The moment was shattered by the sound of running footsteps. They broke apart just as Dr. Vorn and the rest of their team burst into the hangar. "We've secured the shadow dock," Dr. Vorn announced, his eyes widening as he took in the scene before him. Before anyone could comment further, alarms blared throughout the station. A computerized voice warned of critical systems failures and imminent structural collapse. Ralph scrambled to his feet, pulling Asha up with him. "We need to get out of here now," he said, his mind already racing to formulate a plan. "We'll use Zorn's shuttle. It's our best chance of outrunning the cosmic disturbances." As they prepared for their daring escape, Ralph caught Asha's eye. An unspoken understanding passed between them. Whatever happened next, their relationship had irrevocably changed. They would need to confront their feelings and the challenges of a human Prilorian romance. But first, they had to survive. The team worked quickly, securing the unconscious Zorn and preparing the shuttle for launch. As Ralph initiated the launch sequence, the hangar doors began to buckle and warp, the cosmic entity's influence growing stronger by the second. "Hold on," Ralph called out, his hands flying over the controls. "This is going to be close." The shuttle's engines roared to life as the hangar doors finally gave way, exposing them to the chaotic void beyond Haven's Edge. With the station crumbling around them and the cosmic entity's tendrils of energy reaching out hungrily, Ralph guided the shuttle through the opening, plunging them into the unknown. Chaotic void beyond Haven's Edge. Ralph gritted his teeth, his knuckles tightening as he gripped the controls. The shuttle shuddered violently as it cleared the hangar, buffeted by waves of energy emanating from the cosmic entity. Asha's voice cut through the tension. Multiple hull breaches detected on Haven's edge. The station's breaking apart. Ralph didn't dare look back. His eyes were fixed on the screen, searching for a safe trajectory through the debris field that now surrounded them. Fragments of the once mighty station hurtled past, some barely missing the shuttle. "Dr. Vorn," Ralph called out, his voice strained. "What's our status?" The scientist's fingers flew over a console. "The entity's expanding faster than we anticipated. At this rate, it'll overtake us before we reach safe space." Ralph's mind raced. They needed a plan, and fast. He glanced at Asha, her alien features set in unbreakable spirit. An idea struck him. "Asha, I need your Prylorian senses. Can you detect any safe paths through this chaos?" She nodded, closing her eyes in concentration. Her antennae twitched, sensing minute fluctuations in the surrounding space. 30 degrees to port," she said suddenly. "There's a stable corridor, but it's narrow." Ralph didn't hesitate. He banked the shuttle hard, following Asha's guidance. The ship groaned under the stress, but held together. "Dr. Vorn," Ralph called out, "see what you can make of that data we recovered. We need options." As Vorn worked feverishly in the back, Ralph and Asha fell into a rhythm. She sensed the safest routes, and he piloted with precision born of years of experience. They dodged energy tendrils, skirted debris fields, and narrowly avoided space-time distortions that threatened to tear the shuttle apart. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Sweat beaded on Ralph's forehead as he pushed the shuttle to its limits. Alarms blared, warning of system failures and structural integrity issues. Suddenly, Vorn's excited voice cut through the din. "I've found something. The data contains coordinates to an ancient architect outpost in a nearby nebula. It might be our best chance." Ralph quickly weighed their options. The cosmic entity was gaining on them, and their ship was falling apart. A gamble on an unknown alien outpost seemed their only hope. "Plot a course," Ralph ordered, already adjusting their trajectory. "Asha, I need you to—" His words were cut off as a massive energy surge slammed into the shuttle. The main power cut out, plunging them into darkness. For a terrifying moment, they drifted helplessly in space. "Emergency power," Ralph shouted. "We need to restore it now." He and Asha scrambled from their seats, making their way to a small engineering compartment. The space was cramped, barely large enough for one person, let alone two. As they squeezed in together, Ralph became acutely aware of Asha's body pressed against his. They worked in tandem, their hands brushing as they rewired critical systems. Ralph could feel the heat of Asha's skin, smell her alien yet intoxicating scent. Despite the dire situation, he found himself distracted by her proximity. Asha seemed to sense his thoughts. Her eyes met his, filled with an intensity that matched his own. For a brief moment, the universe beyond their cramped compartment ceased to exist. Their lips met in a passionate, desperate kiss. The taste of her was alien yet familiar, igniting a fire within Ralph. Their bodies pressed closer, hands exploring with urgent need. It was a moment of connection, of raw emotion in the face of possible annihilation. A spark from the console jolted them back to reality. With renewed focus, they completed the repairs. Emergency power hummed to life, and they rushed back to the cockpit. The nebula loomed before them, a swirling mass of gas and cosmic dust. As they approached the coordinates, an impossible structure emerged from the chaos. The architect outpost defied conventional geometry, its massive form a testament to the advanced civilization that built it. Before Ralph could react, a tractor beam enveloped their shuttle. They were pulled inexorably towards the station, their battered ship finally coming to rest in a vast docking bay. As the team prepared to disembark, Ralph caught Asha's eye. An unspoken understanding passed between them. Whatever awaited them on this alien outpost, their relationship had irrevocably changed. But first, they had a mission to complete and two civilizations to save. Ralph squared his shoulders and moved towards the airlock. "Let's see what the architects left behind," he said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. As the door hissed open, they stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in the heart of this ancient alien stronghold.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.